Okay, welcome to the Liverpool Hope Open Day for Psychology. My name's Dr. Lorna Burke, and I'd like to introduce our Head of Department, Professor Nicholas Donnelly, and one of our very valuable student representatives, Lena Khan. And Lena is a final year student, so please make as much use of her as you would like to in terms of asking her questions. Now, you should have a chat function or a question and
Hi,
answer.
everyone.
Sorry, yes, say hello, Lena. Would you like to say hello, Lena? Sorry.
I just wanted to introduce myself. Yeah. I'm a third year student, like Lorna said, and happy to answer any of your questions about the course or my life at home.
Okay, so Lena and Nick will be managing the chat, and I'll probably also be asking Lena some questions as well that I think, maybe, she may have some good answers to. So you'll have a Q&A chat function. So through the presentation, if you want to ask questions, Lena and Nick and our wonderful external relation person, Adam Dumbledon, will be monitoring those. And Adam is particularly good on more university-wide questions. And he's also an ex-student of ours many years ago, but he's a very familiar sight on the campus. And you can see some lovely images of our campus. I'm at the Hope Park and Nick is being beamed from the Creative Campus. So if you're doing combined honours subjects, then you may be going between the two campuses or you may be on one or other. Well, you'll be on both if you're doing psychology and a creative art. It might interest you that there's a more or less even split between combined honours and single honours programmes, but I'm going to take you through the differentiation between the two and why it's good to have both types of programmes in a university, where we seem to really be a strong subject within Liverpool Hope. We have a good proportion of the students in Liverpool Hope will be psychology students. So you'll be joining a very robust group of students within the university, but we can talk a little bit more about that later. How many of you are from Liverpool? You can answer on the chat and my colleagues can help me out and tell me if you're Pool Day or further afield. What have we got, Lena?
What would entry requirements be?
Oh, right. Okay, you answer those and I'll carry on. Okay, so we have, students coming from all over the place. The only reason I was mentioning Liverpool was because of that wonderful win last night. The fireworks were amazing. I do hope people were staying safe, but if you're in the city, you couldn't fail to hear them. And I think that's the thing about Liverpool. It's such a vibrant place, and Liverpool Hope is a representative of the city of Liverpool. But if we're focusing on psychology, some of you may have done that at A-level before, but what we try to do, and it fits within our mission at Liverpool Hope, is to be able to try to work towards making some kind of positive difference to people's lives. And in order to be able to do that, you need to have a good grounding in education so that you are able to then take that knowledge and begin to make decisions about other people and how to, facilitate their experiences and their lives. Okay, so in terms of the course itself, our strengths lie in the variation that we have in teaching delivery. Now, a lot of courses will say that you have lectures, seminars, workshops, practicals, and tutorials. But those tutorials really are they're designed to integrate knowledge across the programme. So a lot of the information that you're getting in the lectures and the seminars, we help to bring together and develop a whole set of skills within the tutorials. And I'll go into a little bit more detail about that later. There's a huge variation in assessment, and it's very tailored towards skill development. So that could be team working, so peer-to-peer knowledge sharing and developing of projects and ideas. It can be in different modes of communication, from written to visual communication and oral communication, project management. So there's lots of things that we can build into the programme to help you to take skills forward. And one of the really good things is the amount of choice that you have. So right from first year, you can choose the essays that you would like to answer. You can even have help to devise your own titles. And that continues through the programme as you're beginning to develop projects. We have a core curricula, which is based on the British Psychological Society standards, and that's why we're accredited for both programmes. But in the single honours course, we have an applied curricula. And again, I'll go into some of the more detail with that, and also talk about what you can do beyond the curriculum. Okay, so in terms of what your degree structure will look like, so the open day is very much about giving you information like this. The single major degree is split into 3 levels or 3 years, which you can also have a placement year, and you can also sign up to do a master's in psychology as well. So the single major is divided into two cores. So you will study the core BPS curriculum, and you'll also study the applied curriculum. If you do the single honours, you'll take the BPS standard core curriculum and you'll match that onto the other subject that you're interested in. And perhaps you can let Nick and Lena know some of the other subjects that you're interested in as well on the chat. And if we need to pick up on any of that, we can do that as well. So the first point is that both programmes are accredited by the BPS, and it's your choose to do. They have the same entry requirements, and so look carefully and consider where your interests best lie. In terms of the structure, to become a psychologist, you have to have a really good knowledge base and understand, all the permutations of psychology and how we can use that knowledge to the benefit of others. But that requires some skills as well. And as I mentioned some of those before, like communication, working in teams, using software, statistical software, project design software. But it's all right having all that knowledge and those skills. But if we don't know how to apply that to human experience and the complex context in which people live, then there is there's a limit to what we can do with that psychology. So we have to understand then about other people's lives and how different areas of psychology that you might be familiar with, like biological, cognitive, social, personality, developmental, how do those core areas fit into our lives? And maybe you can think about the euphoria yesterday in Liverpool, contrasting with some of the other issues that have been in the news about places like Liverpool and Bristol, etc. So in terms of the structure, we quite often get asked, how many hours am I in for a university in a week? Well, if you're doing first year, you are in university face-to-face or online, if that's the way we have to do things for social distancing, for 12 hours. So that obviously means outside of that time, you do your project work, you work with other students, and you work on your essays and any other tasks that you're given to do. And so it's split between 6 hours on the core 1 and the core 2 if you're doing single honours, or another core 1 if you're doing another combined honours course. And you can see across the screen that we split that into the number of lecture times and hours that you'll be doing for each of the knowledge, skills and application. And in second year, it's slightly less, so 10 hours, but that denotes more and more independent work that you have to do or achieve outside it. Because at the end of the day, at the end of the course, what we want you to have is the skills, the knowledge and the application to be able to do things and think through things for yourself. So what you're going to learn in psychology is a way of thinking through real life problems and coming up with conclusions, robust conclusions based on evidence, and maybe some solutions that you can gain some practice with to try and work through those as well. Okay, so in terms of the content, I suppose this gives a good overview of that. So in year 1, we'll be trying to convince you that psychology is a science if you don't already think it's a science. And so we will be considering maybe some common held perceptions of psychology. And then how we try to investigate real problems using different techniques and why. And we'll consider some of the main debates within psychology. And if you've looked at psychology courses before, some of the content labels will be familiar, like social and personality psychology. And that's because we're accredited courses. This is what defines our discipline, these core areas. So you will see those across programs. So it's no surprise that they're in our program as well. But I'll give you a little bit of detail on those a little bit later. And you can see our tutorials are called Developing a Psychological Imagination. And you can think about imagination. Imagination is blue sky thinking. What can we do in this world? What do we need to be able to think through real lives, contexts and experiences? And then begin to develop the skills to be able to do that and integrate our knowledge of research, our knowledge of psychology as a science and social and personality. You can see research methods, research design analyses is over 3 years. The dissertation is obviously your final showcase of what you can do with research methods and analyses, as well as, you know, a topic of interest. The main difference, as you can see, between the two courses here, between the major and the single honours course, is the fact that it is a lot more applied in the single honours. So if that's your interest, if you really want to take those core areas and apply it to real life psychology, then that's what you can do. But if you're a combined honours student, there's lots of subjects that marry very, very well with psychology. So you can use your experiences through them as well. Okay, so let's take a look at some of these in a little bit more detail. So science and psychology, you will be looking at different approaches and more or less working out how we decide what is the best approach to answer a particular question. Questions are really, really important. So what informs a lot of our research? So we notice an aspect of human thinking and behaviour, and then we ask a question about that and then try to illuminate it further. But we also want to know about the utility or the purpose of psychology. I mean, what use is it? What can we contribute with all this knowledge? So there'll be a lot of questions posed during this course, and particularly about things like the reliability of data and about how we look at different groups and populations. So I hope that gives you a bit of a feel for that course. In terms of ethics and psychology, so you'd be studying this if you were doing the single honours course. We're looking at the contrast between morality and ethics, or the similarity. And we're also looking at morality as a very clear-cut issue, whether something's right or wrong, but also relative morality. And that's where we build in the nuances, which is so exciting in psychology, where we begin to bring in context. So if somebody steals food for their children because they really can't find any other solution to something, is that morally wrong compared to somebody who may, our attitude towards stealing in general? That's just a very, very sort of basic example. But from that, you can build a lot of nuance as well. And really, we spend quite a lot of time on this, because when you become a psychologist, you embody ethical principles, and they direct how you deal with people, how you research, not just how you research, and even how we teach and design programs. So those principles of respect, of confidentiality, all embody our working lives as well. Okay, so in terms of social psychology and personality psychology, I thought it might help you, some of you may be familiar with some of the terms like attitude theory and social identity theory. If you're not, that's not a problem, because we go into really good detail about those theories, but you will be directly applying that to an issue in society. And the lecturers for that course will take you through that issue from both a social psychology perspective and a personality psychology perspective. And this year, and bear in mind, it was at the beginning of last September, so we were ahead of the curve, we talked about racial discrimination. And for the essay title that they had to do for their assessment, it was on sexism and gender equality. So you can see that we can pick issues up. You can also decide what issues you would like to look at as well, and work on them with your peers. So there's lots of flexibility in that way, but it's good to show you how to model something, take you through that form of thinking, and then you can build in your own reading and knowledge as well. For psychology and globalization, this is on the single honours course. We do pick up quite a lot of psychology, particularly issues of acculturation. So, what is it like for somebody to move from one culture to another? Do they take on their ideas from their previous culture? Do they try to assimilate within the dominant culture? What does that mean in terms of their well-being? But we also have it in terms of how you manage work relationships, how you bring in different ideas from different international communities into the workplace as well. Now, we do get quite a lot of questions about research, design and analyses. And there is quite a good proportion of time, the curriculum devoted to this. But this is actually one of the most exciting parts of psychology. This is where you get to choose projects that you would like to do. And you are taught and you get to practice the skills that are required to carry out research. So imagine you have a really interesting question that you want to ask. And particularly you want to do it at dissertation level because you've built up your skills. You get that opportunity to do that. And I think psychology is pretty unique in that. And most people find it very, very interesting, asking you about what you're doing for your dissertation, what you're doing for projects, because it invariably impacts on lots of people's lives, the types of topics that you choose. So you're going to learn those and you're going to practice, have lots of opportunities to practice those skills. I'll just take us over that and just make sure we've got enough time to... and this is a course that our head of departments involved in, Nick, who I introduced you to before, with my colleague Noreen. and looking at, you know, a lot of social problems that are within society. So students get to choose the social problems, they work in groups to try and think about what, you know, why it might be of interest to psychologists, what can we contribute to that? Could we influence some of that thinking around those problems once we understand the causes and we can identify them? So you can see a lot, again, of the thinking that you're developing is more than just understanding what a theory is. That you do need to know, and you do need to really read up and do as much reading as you can. But you also need to be able to use that theory and that evidence to be able to make that difference you would like to make for other people. So you pick a social problem of interest, and it's really important to work as groups on things like this, because to solve society's big problems, we can't do that alone. We have to bring in lots of other people. And the types of issues that people have looked at are things like the climate crisis, crime, the pressures that are on children as they're developing. And it's interesting because people who were born in the war years would say that they had a lot of pressures, a pressure just getting to school, for example, which is interestingly what's happening at the moment with COVID in a different context. But this refers to maybe some of the way we're assessing young people. So I'm sure a lot of, and, you know, parental demands, employment demands, I'm sure, you know, quite a lot of you have got a lot to say about that. But also looking at democracy, inequality, and mental health conditions. So they're just an example of the choices that you could make, but anything that you would like to look at would be considered, and you can talk to your tutors about that and your group. Nick, is there anything you'd like to add to that one? Or
no, you're doing very well.
Yeah. And remember, we're trying to give you the skills and the understanding to be able to do a wide variety of you know, things with your psychology. So we talked about how we use theory, how we look at societal problems and things like that. But if you're going to run experiments today, then one thing that is really, really good to learn about is how to program experiments. Because remember, one of the advantages of technology is the fact that we can make these experiments a lot more reliable than the early researchers had the opportunity to do. Now, of course, for timings and things like that, you can use something simple like a PowerPoint, and it's pretty elegant for a lot of experiments if you just want to time something. But what a lot of software does, my colleague spends a lot of time developing workbooks and things for you to practice and understand how to use the programs, is that we can start to build an experiment within a program. Now, I always think it's pretty amazing what first year students can do by the end of the year. And to learn a program like this, learn how to develop stimuli that you upload into the program, that you learn the principles of experimentation, so how long you present a stimuli for, how many trials, how many stimuli, how long you get someone to look at the stimuli, how much of a break you give between the different stimuli as well. And that's all really, really important because it fits also into models of psychology as well. So timing, randomization, so you can randomize the stimuli as well. You can do reaction time, and you can get accuracy levels all at the end of your first year. Pretty amazing. Okay, so and we have an integrative tutorial that brings a lot of the work across the curriculum together, because it's all right having these pockets of learning, but what we want you to do is to bring them together and understand that these are all the skills and the knowledge that we need to do our job really as psychologists or psychology students. at the time. So there's quite a lot of reflection there as well. And that is actually another skill that is used a lot professionally as well. And, you know, there'll be opportunities to work with your tutors if you don't understand something. The groups are relatively small. You build up relationships with your peers, and you're very, very, very much encouraged to ask questions, and you know, not to worry about what you say, as long as it's you know, there's an etiquette which would, you know, generally apply to those situations. And if we go into the second year, you'll have, you know, you may be aware, if you've looked at what psychology is, you will be aware that you probably will be doing things like cognitive psychology and study perception as well. So studying some of those basic processes of how we see, hear, touch, smell within the world. We tend to focus on visual processes and auditory hearing processes. And I find it really, really useful to understand cognitive psychology, because I look at reading and writing processes in children. And it's very, very basic level. They need to understand how to process a sound and an image. So you need to have the bedrock of your psychology to be able to do a lot of applied areas. But perception and cognition is a lot more than that. And even the area of attention has many, many subdivisions of that. So it's absolutely, you know, fascinating. And the fact that we can then take all that information into the real world is really good as well. So you'll also do a project based on that, a visual cognition project. So you get practice at doing research on those topics. And the same for developmental psychology. You can see an image of me there. I already gave a hint of the types of things that I'm interested in. But in being interested and focused on one particular topic, we also have a broader range, because you have to know about other aspects. I have to know what, you know, not just that a child can process a letter and a sound. There's a lot of emotion related to writing as well. You know, believing that you can do something, persevering at a task. So we tend to blend other areas as well. But there's lots of things that you can study in developmental psychology. It is over the lifespan, so not just small children, right up to you know, your final moments, if we're going to be you know, more morbid about things. But we may look at parenting, when we look at attachment, for example, and look at how children process information that then leads to how they form relationships with one another. So I hope that's given you a bit of a flavour. And we mention applied psychology, you know, quite a bit. So when you're doing the applied psychology course at second year, you'll learn about work and health psychology, how we use technology to promote interventions within work and health psychology. So you're probably all quite familiar with things like Fitbits and apps. So we look again at the utility of those. Where does the psychology come into that? How can we inform their development, or how has psychology informed the development? What sort of identities do you form through this technology? And I mentioned before about being able to do interventions, and we want to make a difference. So what we want you to do is be able to design an intervention. So not just a research project, but if you know all the research evidence, you know all the theories, and you've looked and done research, and you say there's a problem here, there's a high incidence of whatever it is, it might be obesity, it might be gangs in particular areas. What do we do about this? How can we use our psychology to design an intervention that's robust, reliable, and can be evaluated? Because that's what we can do as psychologists. That's, I suppose, our unique selling point in a way. I mentioned before about cognitive psychology and developmental psychology. You'll have a project. Now that project will be through research design and analysis. So you'll have lectures that will take you through different methods. And then you'll have the opportunity with your peers to design and carry out a project. A project will be an experiment. It will be a qualitative interview-based project. And you'll also have the opportunity to design a mixed methods project. So it could be questionnaires and interviews. It could be experiments and interviews. Whatever is appropriate to the question. And as I say, for the interventions, again, you get choice over what you would like to do. And I think that and the research methods really give you very, very good tools to take out into the workplace, whether you're a psychologist or you're not a psychologist, in terms of going for professional training. You'll always have the embodiment of psychology and its principles and its ways of doing things that are very, very useful outside of the tight area of psychology. Third year, you'll be looking at biological psychology, and we have quite a number of experts in this area, and they use, you know, some of the really good equipment that we have in the lab areas. So when you're doing your dissertation project, if that's an area of interest, then you can pick up some of, you know, using some of that really sophisticated technology like EEG equipment, eye tracker as well, if you want to measure the cognitive processes that relate to some biological principles. So in biological psychology, we are interested in things like emotion, looking at sensory processing, and even looking, you know, at things like stress and sleep. But you'll be able to do this from different perspectives. So you'll have had social perspectives that you can also think about in the context of basic biological processes as well. So we would want you to carry that knowledge through with you through to the different years of study. And because emotion and motivation is really important to how we engage in life, we have a course that will be looking at that. And it can be something from moral emotions like guilt, for example, and shame. You can look at progression. Now, you may have come across some of those ideas like emotion regulation earlier on, but you'll look at these in different contexts and try to work through them in a little bit more depth, because they also have a great relevance to well-being as well. And a lot of what people in psychology would like to go into ultimately is to improve the well-being of other people. And I spoke at the beginning about you know, some examples of what we might look at in psychology to make a bigger contribution. So this is a contribution that's bigger than a small local project or even a national project on a reading scheme or something. This is taking on society's biggest issues. And how prepared are we as psychologists to do that? What tools do we have? How do we recognise the issues that we can get involved in? And in light of the recent COVID pandemic, how prepared were psychologists to get involved in that pandemic? Could they mobilise the resources quick enough when we have a crisis, for example? Because responses can't always take a long time to think about. So we have to, you know, we have to think about when that response is most appropriate. But it has to be, you know, a well thought out, valuable response. So there could be, you know, we mentioned things like climate change before, but But one of the big issues is obviously going to be colonialisation of the curriculum. You know, how prepared are psychologists to be involved in issues like that, as well as the ones that you probably think of, like crime in the UK, crime in different populations, mental health, resilience. You'll study a lot of that as you're going through it. This is to prepare and think about and give you confidence to take that knowledge forward, because it's not just about today. We need to future-proof what we can do as well. And you know, quite often people are interested in options, which is again a way of you can explore what you'd like to explore. And that they, you know, this is an indicative list, or we can, you know, we do have others that we add to this and we take away. You're going to have options whether you do the major course or the single honours course. So you'll have the core lecture series, which I've just mentioned, about biological and emotion and motivation psychology. You'll also do your dissertation in psychology. It has to be in psychology, but it can be an applied area which you have an interest in. But you'll also have a choice of two options in first year, in the core one, and 2 options in the single honours. So if you're doing single honours, you'll have 4 options. And if you're doing a major, you'll have 2 options. So, you know, that's, you know, really good for people doing a major and a single honours course. You've got equal chance of being able to choose an option, or not equal chance. Obviously, if you're doing single honours, you'll get to do more of that. And you know, obviously that's your choice what programme you do. And I think this is the part of the course, the dissertation, is where you get to show off all you've learned in psychology. It brings it all together. It's not the only thing that could probably do that when you're doing things like intervention studies, when you're learning your core theories. That is all the nuts and bolts of psychology. But this, you'll bring together your theory, potentially an application of that theory, and you'll also be choosing methods. You should work on this relatively independently, but with support from your tutor. So we're really trying to build confidence that you can do these things. And a lot of our work is about reassurance, because if you've had all the early education, we feel confident that the skills have been delivered. Now, obviously, you'll probably go at different paces. So we'll work with you to try and develop a really you know, nice project with you. So as I say, you have to do that whether you're a single honours or a double major student. So to recap, I hope I've shown you there's lots of different types of teaching delivery, the different topics. I haven't really talked lots about assessment, but it's very closely aligned to, if you're doing an intervention study, it'll look like a project. You'll do presentations, you'll do the programming assessment if you're doing single honours, you do essays. You know, there's a real richness of the different types of assessment there, but particularly in areas that you would like to study more. And I hope I've given you lots and lots of examples of not just the basic processes and basic understanding of psychology, but how we apply it as well. That's just a real small snapshot. There's so much that you can do with it if you're interested. So what do you do beyond your degree? Well, we have a really good careers department. So if you're interested in gaining voluntary experience, for example, during the summer breaks, which really will enhance your CV. If I'm saying that the way that we make a difference to others is not just through research, experimentation and things like that, and understanding basic processes, but it's also understanding the context, the complex context that people interact with, and just ourselves, even on a daily basis. Then it's really good to get experience of typical functioning. You don't have to be based in a prison. In fact, it would be really difficult to get a placement in a prison, for example. But understanding typical functioning really helps you to understand when functioning isn't, as you would suggest, might be within a normative range, although even that word is contested within psychology today. So I'm thinking about then beyond your degree, and how we can, sort of measure some of those outcomes that you might want to achieve for yourself. So we do offer research internships. So if you want to get involved in one of the labs that we have, then you can contact the leaders of those labs and the people that work within them. It'll be made very clear to you who works in which lab, and you can volunteer, and you'll be given a couple of hours or a project to work in if there's something suitable for you. I mentioned about the placements, where you can take a year out to do a placement. But you can also do what we call study abroad placements, so international placements. You may want to do a term somewhere. This year we had students going out to Canada and the US for a term, and that usually happens the second term or the second semester of the second year. And there's an international office that'll work with you on that, and an international coordinator, to make sure that the psychology you do out there is comparable in terms of content to what we do here. So that maintains your accreditation. If you want to do overseas projects, I think they're probably on hold for a year or so with the current climate, but we still get involved with our host communities while we can't go out to visit them. So places like India, Peru, South Africa, Uganda, and a number of countries. So next week I'm doing some live sessions with a group that we have placements with in India, because we haven't been able to go out this year. So we keep the commitment to our host communities, whatever the situation is, and that's really important. The Service and Leadership Award, every student can sign up to. That's where you have counted. The Psychology Society and the Duke of Edinburgh Gold Award. And there's obviously the societies that the Student Union operate as well. And I know he's a bit shy today. He's not shy, he's just in the background. Adam, he is a familiar face in the Student Union. And I think I know him better from there now than I do from when he was a student on a course. So you do tend to see us around, not just in our what you might say our typical roles are. Okay, so beyond the degree, what can you do? Well, we've recently introduced an integrated master's programme. So you could do 4 years, and in the final year, you again do more fine-grained projects, learn more advanced techniques in analyses and statistics. But this is a really wonderful opportunity to work almost like an apprentice with a researcher within the department. So you'll be working on key projects that really, embody that the areas that we have within psychology and in Liverpool Hope, and extend those areas. So you'll be at the kind of cutting edge of research. So you may have done some of that for your dissertation at third year level, but we're just taking that step further. So the postgraduate, of course, we have PhD students. I think they're 2 of Nick's students there. that you can see in the image. And that's, you know, the very sort of beginning of the PhD, where they are presenting their first set of findings to a wider audience. Now, we have students on our master's courses and undergraduate courses that go to conferences. And that's usually, if it's aligned to a staff member's research area, but not exclusively so. So, you know, there's plenty of scope to develop beyond the undergraduate years. You can stay with us for as long as you like. In terms of destination data, well, you know, the thing about psychology is to be a psychologist, you have to do quite a lot of training. So a lot of the employment that you pick up along the way is likely to be in, you know, sort of charity contexts, or it could be a teacher, which your salary would be a lot more. So this is an average salary range. But the main point of this is that it's comparable to other universities. If you look at the figures of people who go on to work and study, which is crucial because that's really potentially what you want to use your degree for, that's you know, sort of comparable. We have slightly more compared to Liverpool University that are working. And so you'll see a lot of promotion of our graduate employment statistics, which are really, really good. And that's why, because the data bears that out. So if I talk to you, I try to, well, I will support it with evidence, because if you talk to me, that's what I want you to bring. I want you to bring your evidence. I want you to bring your understanding. And there's a national student survey for third year students each year. And that filters into things like league tables. So really look finely at league tables to what they actually tell you. So for your experience, the student satisfaction scores are probably the most important. Obviously, universities are judged on their research capacity and intensity and environment as well. So look at both, but what I'm presenting here is the National Student Survey. And we do have a very vibrant research you know, environment. So if you want to learn something, you would hope that the staff were good at explaining things and that we could make it potentially interesting. And that's quite a big ask when lots of people have got different interests, different goals in life. But if we can inspire you to learn about something more about something that you think you're not interested in, well, I think that that's a really, really good win for us. What a lot of students like to be able to do is contact us. And you can see, you know, that seems to be a real strength for us. I would also suggest things like providing helpful comments on your work. If you're going to improve, we all need to improve. We all need feedback. We all need that to be constructive, whatever we're doing. So hopefully tease apart some of these, begin to interrogate, and that's really good skills for being a psychologist. I know some of you may be interested in a foundation year, and that's a course that's run before the degree. I know that sounds sort of simple, but that might be of interest to you. Now, you can find out more information about that on the web pages, but psychology has a component of that. So we're in the science foundation year. So there may be some students that would like to do the foundation year, get some psychology knowledge and understanding, as well as you know, sort of skills in writing, presenting, analysis, which they can then take into a first year of their degree. So I think that's quite a lot of talking from me. I think, you know, maybe we could pick up some of the questions, or perhaps I could go to Lena first, and she may have things that she would like to tell you about her experience that I missed.
Hi. Yeah, like Lorna said, everything is really good from first year. It's very well organized, and I didn't have any trouble with stats, even though I'm the best in maths, because the support give you is really, really good. And they're very friendly, so you don't need to feel like you're going to be shy to ask them anything. They're very open to answering any questions, whether on email or just their drop-ins. And I feel like you're really going to enjoy your 3 years at Hope. I know I did, and I made some really lifelong friends, so that's really nice.
And do you want to tell them what you're going to do next, Lena?
Yeah, at the minute, I was actually considering just applying for a job. With mental health support work, there's so many jobs at the minute, but I just thought maybe to go straight for masters, and the job opportunities will always be there. So I'm now applying for King's College London for clinical neurodevelopmental sciences. So it's really opened my doors for work.
So it's nice to have a choice actually between work and study, isn't it? That you feel that there are opportunities whichever way you go. So it feels like a proper choice, doesn't it? I'd imagine.
Yeah, like the career advisor really helped me. Yeah, he was like telling me all the different options I can do, but I was like, for now, maybe a master's would be a great thing to do, but I'm not limited in my job opportunities as well. So, yeah.
And Nick, is there anything that came up in the questions that we could maybe pursue a little bit more?
Yeah, so you might like to just talk a little bit about how the contact time is distributed through the week.
In terms of the lecture, number of hours, lectures and things.
Yeah. So there's a question about that. There's another question about the joint honours, the major programs, and whether taking a major program would affect employability.
Yeah, that's a popular question. Yeah.
What else is there? So there's a question about the offer level, but I think we sort of dealt with that. But maybe to mention that might be a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the only other thing that might be worth commenting on is if people want to go on after, much as Lena's thinking about, after their undergraduate degree to do something professionally within psychology.
Oh yeah, okay.
Right. What's important about the undergraduate degree that they should keep in mind?
Yeah. Okay, so contact time. In first year, you will be, if you're a single honours student, you will have contact every single day with psychology. So Monday, you will have your lectures for hours, have a tutorial. On Tuesday, you will have some seminars, luckily with Nick, hopefully if he's still doing them, but he is doing them next year. So basically you'll have seminars for a couple of hours on a Tuesday and on a Wednesday. And Thursday you'll have some more lectures and you'll have another set of tutorials. And then on a Friday, you'll have the opportunity to do a practice workshop for your research methods. But during that week, you'll also have 3 support opportunities for research methods. So you'll have your lecture on the Monday. On the Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, you'll have the opportunity to contact staff within a certain time period to receive further support if you haven't quite caught or understood everything from the lecture, despite sort of practicing different problems. And then on the Friday, there's another opportunity to work with a colleague on that. And in second year, you are in for approximately 4 days, and in third year, 3 days. And third year, you do need the extra time to be able to do your dissertation. Maybe you've got participants that aren't students. You have to make relationships with different people, external agencies, for example. So that's how the contact time is built up.
I think it's probably important. important to add that, you know, like all degrees taken in a full-time mode,
Yeah.
outside of the contact time, you'll be doing other work.
That's right.
You know, the assessments will require that of you.
Yeah. Please be prepared for that. I know it's unrealistic for people not to work, to have other, you know, things that you have to do, caring responsibilities and all those sorts of things. Our lives aren't straightforward, you know, a lot of the time. But please be prepared for almost viewing it like a working week. If you're in a job or something like that, that you will probably need that amount of time to do yourself justice. That doesn't mean that you can't work, and it doesn't mean that you can't have caring responsibilities. I think at various elements of our education, Nick and I have both tried to do both, have job, study, and you know, look after children. So we understand that, but you do have to also, you know, it is quite a major commitment, but it's enjoyable, and you don't have to do it within a 9 to 5. There's evenings and there's weekends, and you can, you know, decide. The best thing is to be organised, actually. We try to organise the curriculum for you, make sure you know what you're doing, and then, you know, if you organise your other life, then you should do, you know, sort of pretty well. The major and employability, the absolute crucial thing is that you are doing the accredited program, and that you learn all the curriculum standards and everything about research that's required by the British Psychological Society, and that is the bedrock of your future employment as a professional psychologist, which I'll come back to in a minute. If you're going into employment in psychology, what a lot of people are looking for is how well you apply that psychology. So obviously the single honours allows you to work through the application. But I have a lot of major students doing other subjects who do dissertations with me, for example. And what they quite often do is bring their knowledge of their other subject into psychology as well. So the questions that are being raised in another subject, they can pursue if they would like to through their dissertation. And even if they don't, they look at it, and not just through the lens of that discipline, but through the lens of psychology as well. So that's really what you have to do, is show how you can apply psychology if you want to go into the workplace. So in terms of employability, we give you those tools, and you also develop those independently. It's your own thinking and your own way of doing it with our training that helps you into employment. And as Lena mentioned, our careers service is very, very supportive, and can, you know, sort of help enlighten you on that as well. Offer level, I think it's 3Bs. Now, the reason why I say I think it is because our admissions department deal with all that. When students come to us, they'll have checked the qualifications. So we don't look up everybody's sort of, you know, sort of qualifications or anything like that. So if you check the web pages, but the current offer should be 3Bs or equivalent learning. For how we're led professionally into professional areas, well, you'll see any information that the British Psychological Society gives is that they suggest that your undergraduate degree, it's not just suggest, is the first step to chartership. So it becomes like your toolbox. So the more you can put your head into psychology in the undergraduate years, not only will it improve your marks, the more that you will be able to enter and use that psychology in a professional area. So they're assuming that you have all that knowledge. And then when you go into the professional area, they'll teach you the tools of the trade. What do you need to be able to do that job? You'll also have to do research if, for any of the areas. But if you bear in mind that clinical and educational psychology, they're doctorates, they want to look at your research credentials. What projects have you been involved in? Well, you've got 5 projects that you've been involved in. You've got intervention studies, if you do, you know, the single honours that you've been involved in. So a lot of that is with thinking about not just what you're doing, you know, a lot of different employments, but what is actually needed for the professional areas as well. And one of my ex-colleagues leads the prison psychology service for the Northwest. And that's the thing that she says to all students: make sure you understand cognitive, social, biological psychology, because you will use it all. But what you will be trained to do in those environments are things like risk assessments, which on the applied psychology, you'll also get an opportunity to do that in the context of health psychology. So a lot of things overlap in the professional areas, but that's why if you're a major student and any undergraduate student, you should have those skills to go forward with. So what you then need to do is get some work experience. And that's what Lena was saying. You know, she knows she can get the work experience, and she knows she can go on to do a master's if she wants to. And that's a lovely position to be in. So has that answered some of those questions? I think we're on time now. Anything you'd like to add, or any other questions we haven't asked?
I think that's everything.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. I think the sun is shining now, so might be a nice opportunity for people. Yeah, not to go out and go wild, but, you know, keep safe. Okay, so thank you all, and goodbye for now.